You're listening to the Gap Podcast with your host, me, Morgan McGill. As we talk God and politics, my prayer is that you're inspired and encouraged to be a part of filling the God-sized gap in the political sphere. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to The Gap. I'm your host, Morgan McGill, and with me today, if you're watching, you probably recognize this face. He's gone viral quite a few times for giving a much-deserved tongue lashing to some of the tyrants in our state of California.
Yes.
And what that has led into Freedom Revival events and just so much good has come from this man right here. And I'm so excited to have him here today. Shaun Frederickson, welcome to the podcast.
That is so kind of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you. I want to start right into it. I mean, before 2020, no one really knew who you were. You weren't really active in politics. I remember in a previous conversation we had, you said like you had pretty much zero interest in politics.
Totally. Yes.
So I kind of want to just start from there of like what woke you up and what kind of got that inspiration going.
Yeah. So backstory, before politics for me, I was a photo and video producer. I've got a small production company. I've done advertisement, I've done weddings, I've done lots of events, and politics was, for me, a dirty word. It was for evil cronies that were looking for power and consumption and to get famous. And so I never even looked at it. I didn't understand it. It was another world. There's like the public space and then there's politics. And nobody likes politicians. Until it was Trump was elected and everybody had to know something about politics. Yeah. So it was 2015. There was this massive debate about these two horrible people. Nobody liked either one. They're both these tyrants of sort, I suppose. Like Trump is a racist, bigoted person, and then Hillary Clinton is hiding emails and killing people, but nobody knows why or where they are. And so I just started kind of asking questions and realizing I don't know anything. I know nothing. And so I would post questions on Facebook back in 2015. I'd post all sorts of random questions like, why does everybody hate Trump? And what is it about Hillary Clinton that's so evil? You know, just throwing them out there because I was genuinely curious. Yeah. And it created this massive conversation on social media because nobody was asking questions.
Wow.
And I was genuinely trying to learn something because I found myself as being extremely ignorant. And it was through those questions that I realized I've got to start reading books. So I picked up Thomas Paine, Common Sense, and it was the first book that I ever read to realize I know nothing about American history. Wow. Where I thought I knew. You know, there's this like arrogance or an ego within all of us that we don't want to look stupid and feel stupid. And so to admit the fact that you don't know something to yourself can be such a hurdle at times. And admitting to myself that I'm a fool when it comes to American history was really necessary because then it created this continual hunger. Like if I don't know this about how the American Revolution started and Thomas Paine and that letter that he wrote in January of 76, then what else don't I know? And so I started getting curious about the Federalist Papers and the U.S. Constitution, and then that the 1619 Project was really popular, you know, like 2018, 2019. And so I was like, is that accurate? And so I started like asking questions about that, and then COVID happened. So here I am at the mass of my curiosity with American politics and the history of what it means to be an American. And then COVID, where they're like telling us you need to shut down and listen to everything the government says. And I'm reading all this stuff where they're like, don't listen to government. Government's evil and tyrannical, and you need to be a citizen and know what it means to be a citizen. Yeah. I'm like, holy smokes. This is 1776 all over again. Wow. Like, and we're a part of it. And so I felt like I had to find a way to get engaged.
Wow, that's amazing. And also totally God ordained.
Oh, totally divine.
Like seriously, like if you hadn't had that background, had he not been sharpening you in that space in those years, then when it came time for your moment to get active, your Esther moment.
Come on. Well, I prefer to say David moment.
Okay,
but it's understood.
You know, but it is for such a time as this.
Come on.
You know.
Come on. Yes, I'm with you.
And he was preparing you.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that, because when you spoke that first time you spoke, you opened up, like the door, like floodgates opened up for other people to do the same. And you actually spoke with authority because you knew what you were saying. You knew what you were talking about. It wasn't just like pie in the sky, random things. It wasn't emotional. It was based on based in truth.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I think more people need to have that background, honestly.
Yeah, I think that there's a big resistance for curiosity.
Wow.
That if society can feel like all things have been discovered, just do what you're good at, which is keep working at the job, keep following what you're told to do at in the workplace, or stop dreaming, stop innovating, which is exactly what we need to ignore. We need to get curious. What other things are there?
Yeah.
It's curiosity that if they can stifle that, then there will be no more solutions.
Exactly.
Then you will be forced to obey the authority or the tyrants that might come up or that currently exist.
Yeah, we're creative beings. We're constantly supposed to be learning and creating.
Yes.
So COVID happened.
Yeah.
And
the lockdowns.
Lockdowns happened, and you realized you woke up. You're like, no, like this is not okay.
Yeah.
What did your first meeting look like? How did that moment happen where you're like, I'm going to this meeting and I'm going to say something?
I didn't even know those meetings existed. So that's how ignorant I am. All right. So March of 2020, I was at my church when they locked down, and my pastor comes in, and he's a nice guy. I love him to death. We're having like weekly meetings up to that point, and he comes into the church where I'm hanging out in the coffee shop, and he's terrified. And I'm like, dude, don't take this serious. You're not taking the news serious, are you? But he's terrified. And he submits to the fear of culture rather than the authority of God. And I didn't even realize there was a difference. I thought we were all Christians, and I thought we ignore whatever the world says because we're set apart. That's who we are. Yeah. So I start messing with my pastor, and he took it terribly, where he's like, how dare you challenge? You need to respect. People are going to die. Elbow me. Don't hug me. That kind of thing. And I realized, oh my God, like this is serious. So immediately my community at my church disappears because my pastor is like reprimanding me and shaming me, and my friends are following his lead. And I show up at a rally down in San Diego. There was a couple rallies where people are showing up just with flags and banners across from the federal building. I don't even know where that is, but I was there like 4 or 5 times. There were rallies down there. There's another one in Huntington Beach. And so all I thought that there was to do was go to these rallies and just show that I'm in opposition. So I would take my son, and at one of the rallies, we ended up, me and my son and my wife would be there, and I think Aaliyah was there, my eldest, and then we didn't have the other 2 yet. But my wife's pregnant, and my son is on my shoulders at one rally, and a photographer took a photo of him. I'm wearing my MAGA hat, and my dreads are coming through it, and that photographer was from the LA Times. And so he posted me in the LA Times, and so immediately all friends that I had that were even slightly neutral recognized here I am with a MAGA hat on, so all of my cards are exposed. My community, if you weren't conservative, if you didn't vote for Trump, then at that point you knew I did, and I lost even more friends.
Wow.
And so here I am trying to figure out, what do we do? I'm trying to lead my family. I'm trying to lead my community. My friends in my community looked at me as like trying to find solutions. And so here I am like asking questions and showing them where the rallies are. And one event that I went to, it was Sharon McKeeman leading the Let Them Breathe. It was the Smile Fest. Oh. Yeah, Let Them Breathe is her organization. Yeah. But the Smile Fest in, I want to say it was June of 21, I think. And she had this idea. She's trying to figure out what to do. And I said, you know what you need to do? Have a big event. Bring all these specialists in and host a big event and like encourage people and mobilize people and activate people. And she was like, that's a great idea. I'll do it. And so she did it at Mission Church. I showed up to photograph it. And I'm photographing all the stuff because I'm just trying to find a way to be helpful, because that's my skill set. I'm a photographer. I'll take photos and we'll share them, and great things will happen. And lo and behold, Audra Morgan is at that event. She comes up to me and she says, you need to speak. And I was like, all right, speak where? She's like, at the county. And I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, tomorrow or whatever, a couple days later, I don't remember. I think that was probably Saturday. So like in 3 days, meet me at this address, and there'll be people there with us, and we'll tell you what the topics are. But these are the people locking us down. And for the first time, I was like,
wow,
wait, these are the guys? These are the ones that are responsible for this?
Yeah.
Like this is the enemy. Like I had no idea. Here I was like floundering, trying to find the enemy, and she pointed me in the right direction. And so Tuesday morning, I wake up early and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is so stupid. What am I going to say? And I show up. She gives me like a rundown of all the agenda items and what they're going to be. And she says, this is the one where they're locking us down. She circles it. I read it and I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Because I've done enough studying and reading all of the continual news articles, obviously, because everybody was doing that. The studies, everybody was doing that. But the county was putting out information about the deaths and the number of people that were dying and the population, their age, their demographic. So what I would do is every time they released something, I would screenshot it and then I would input that data in my notes on my phone so that if I had a conversation where I'm going to a grocery store and somebody was curious about why I'm not wearing a mask, I would say, because where's the data to prove that I should? Because I wasn't wearing masks at all. And dude, I got the cops called on me so many times. I had people refuse service to me. But I felt like that was my stand because I didn't know who the enemy was. So I'm at least going to stand my ground. Yeah. So Audra tells me who the enemy is. That Tuesday morning I show up, she gives me information, and I wasn't going to speak. I was intimidated. Like, I can't go into that building. Look how official this is. Yeah. And then you walk in there for the first time and you see all the marble and they're sitting up on this like podium with this massive desk and these really nice leather chairs, and there's like the symbol, the seal of the county, and all the suits
Wizard
they're
of
wearing.
Oz moment.
Yeah, dude, the Wizard of Oz is exactly how it felt like. It's so grand, and who am I? So I'm just sitting in the back, and you see, there's probably 8, maybe 12 people that Audra had coordinated to be there, and I'm by far the least educated, by far. Like I had no idea what I'm doing. I've never been there before. And Audra is just urging me, please just say something. Just say something. Say something. So I was like, all right, I'll say something. So I fill out the little sheet. I turn it in. And I'm just praying. I'm like praying Psalms 23, like, Lord, give me words to speak. And I'm sitting there on my phone. And to this day, Audra's like, she refers to this memory of hers when I'm sitting there on my phone, just like frantic, trying to figure out what to say. And she's like, dude, he's not even into this. He doesn't even care. He's just sitting over there on his phone. But in reality, I'm like, I got to figure out some kind of speech to write. Yeah. Because everybody else had these great speeches. And so when the moment came, they called my name up. And I'm just reciting Psalm 23, like, Lord, lead me. May your rod and your staff comfort me. Like I'm walking through the shadow. Like you are my guide. And if you want me to speak, please give me words. And I remember there was such fear until I got to the mic. And it was gone. It reminded me of this story when I was in Spain years before. My wife and I, we were traveling on Easter with some family, and we happened to stumble into this small little town where there was a ton of cars everywhere, chaos, pandemonium, cars everywhere. This bustle, like rustling, bustling was going on in this small town. And so we just asked somebody, like, what the heck's going on? And they're like, dude, the Running with the Bulls is happening today. And we're like, no way. Where? And they're like, look, the auditorium or the amphitheater. And we're like, dude, let's go. So we go in there and we're watching the Running with the Bulls, and these guys run into this arena and these bulls are chasing after them. And my father-in-law, who was visiting us, he like elbows me and he's like, hey, you should go down there. You should be a part of this. Don't be a coward. Go. Your wife will love it. And I look to my wife, who's his daughter, and I'm like, would you love it? She's smiling, and she's like, you should go. And I'm wearing flip-flops and cut-off shorts. And I said, all right, let's do it. And so I'm like running down there, and it's like an out-of-body experience at the moment. Like, I don't know if I'm tunnel vision or what, but there's so much fear about how stupid this action is. But I get down to the wall that you jump to get into the arena, and I remember like my heart's racing and my hands are shaking. And I climb up the wall, and I'm terrified until my feet hit the dirt on the other side. And the second it happened, it was like one of those movie scenes where it's like a close-up at the shoes, and then it's like peace of mind. Yeah. And I remember like feeling like I'm here.
Yeah.
It's the man in the arena that counts. It's not the critic that counts, right?
Yeah.
And I was a man in the arena doing what the men were doing. And I had the whole goal of, I'm going to touch the dang bull, dude. I'm going to touch the thing. Like, I'm not in here just to hang. Like, I'm not going to hang by the wall. I want to touch it. And speaking at the board felt just like that.
Wow.
Where the second I opened my mouth, it was, I know what I'm talking about. I know this. And for the first time, I get to tell Nathan Fletcher, who's the tyrant who's leading this, and Wilma Wooten, who I've read everything about, to them faces. Like, I know you, and I know what you're saying, and you're lying to us, and I'm not okay with it, and I will call you out.
Wow.
And it was, dude, it was so special. Yeah. And it was crazy how it just took off.
Yeah. And you went viral. That one moment, God was like, all right, I'm giving you this microphone.
Totally.
And it's been really cool to watch.
Yeah.
I remember the August, I don't remember what day it was, but I remember it was in August meeting where it was like, how many, 16 hours of people who showed up.
There were a few of those.
Speak. Yeah. Like till almost midnight. And I remember seeing people like you and people who were never, actually like politically involved before. As someone who'd been politically involved for a really long time, like faces that I had never seen, new faces, people who were just getting activated. And I was like, I felt like God was like, okay, it's time for you to step back into the ring. It's time for you, because he had me in the shadows. He was refining me and strengthening me in the quiet places with him. And in that, watching everybody step back up, I was like, God was calling me back into the ring. And it was like a beautiful moment. So thank you. Because
so special.
Because I know you inspired other people to do the same.
Yeah.
So what, like, after that first experience, how did, like, what happened next? Like, where did God take you next?
Yeah. So it was really trying to figure out what to do. I've been behind the lens for most of my adult life. As a photographer, I'm always waiting for a moment to happen to capture it, or moving things around to push somebody else into the limelight. Somebody's like, oh, dude, I just want to get, I want to get more likes, or I want to get my brand to be known. So I'm helping them do that. And so here I am, where the cameras are on me, and I don't know what to do with the attention. Where I had a social media account, but I didn't really use it. I always kind of feel kind of strange about marketing and branding myself. I value humility, and there was this fear of, well, now they're looking at me. What do I say? So I just kept praying and asking myself, well, what do I want them to do? What do I want them, if I say something, what do I want the reaction to be? And so from that, I would operate. I would say, I want them to know who God is. I want to know who my, like, where my authority comes from. And I pray that they'll no longer be in fear. Like, it was really simple. And so I would say things that would focus toward that. Like, I remember countless times just thinking, like, why are we so afraid? And I would say something just on social media about addressing the fear. Or I remember one time I did a story about going into the DMV. The DMV was like a prison where you can't get in that place unless you wear a mask.
I know.
And I was like, dude, I'm going in. I'm going to do it. And so lo and behold, I document my experience going into the DMV with no mask on. And I'm showing people this is how it's done, because there's so few leaders. There were so few people that were showing an example of how to replicate it. And so I was like, well, if I've got eyes, I guess I ought to do something that people can figure out, like, this is how it's done. And so I did that as often as I could. Or I remember speaking at the County Board of Supervisors, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this either. But look at me. Here I am. You can do it too. Because it's never been about me. It's always about our communities. Amen. It's always about, there's a greater purpose for us. Like, you can acquire all the wealth in the world, but that will not satisfy yourself unless you have someone to celebrate it with. So focus on the other people. If it's possible to raise all tides, then all ships will be able to have clear seas, Yeah. And I think too often as Americans, we get so tunnel vision on our own success.
Amen.
And we forget that our own success is really when everyone else gets to be a part of it with you. Like, don't sacrifice your family for fame and fortune. Like, how about you take them with you on the journey? And That's really been a heartbeat of mine, which is how the Freedom Revival came to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I ended up having friends, and I pitched an idea to a friend, the idea to a friend, and she looked at me and she said, yeah, you should do that. And that was Carrie Bowler. If you know who Carrie Bowler is, she's like the strongest, most incredible person. I love her to death because she looked me in the eyes and said, yeah, Shaun, you should do that. I was like, all right, you know, like, let's figure out how to do it. And so I mobilized a bunch of friends and we cast vision.
And it was a great success. Friends, in over 15 years in the political sphere, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen amazing men and women forego running for office because they have no idea where to start. And on the other side of that, I can't tell you how many times I have seen amazing candidates fumble the ball so hard because they have no idea what they're doing when they decide to run for office. That is why I founded Revival Consulting. The heart of this company is to help God-fearing men and women get elected to local, state, and federal office, because we see a country where the men and women in positions of political power and influence know and love God. If that's you, if you're considering running for office but you have no idea where to start, or you need help, go to itsrevival.com and fill out our consultation form, because we want to help you. We need your voice now more than ever. If you have seen anything that's going on in the world today, you know that you were put on this planet for such a time as this, and we need you. So please don't hesitate. Go to itsrevival.com and fill out our consultation form today.
Yeah.
It was a great success.
It was awesome.
I mean, it literally shook the ground in Southern California to have that many. I mean, to have open worship on the waterfront, to have these pastors who were unafraid get up there and like speak the truth in an open space where everyone could hear it, and then have these political leaders who were unafraid to speak the truth in an open space with thousands of people, and to build that community. It was amazing. And like, seriously, such a time as this, like, God anointed you and appointed you for this moment, and it's so cool to see all the things that he's doing through you.
Come on. I think it's like David. So I think David was anointed, obviously, or he was anointed with Samuel. But remember that moment when David's going up to the battle? He wants to see it for himself, and his brothers are mocking him for being there. But what's interesting is when David's bringing them food, he hears Goliath. And his response is, my God will not be mocked. And he knows who God is, that he recognizes the problem. And yes, he was anointed, and yes, he was called. But in the midst of that, I believe my perspective is that he knew God was going to use someone who was willing to stand for God. And so when he decided, God will not be mocked.
So good.
God, I mean, I'm a man. God's not going to be mocked. God is the one who determines justice, and like, justice is mine, revenge is mine. Well, God uses people, and God used David in that moment. And yes, David had a sling and a stone, but God is the one that moved the stone where it needed to go while it was in midair. Like, that is the Lord, like the wind, all that stuff. And I believe God is looking for more people that are willing to recognize he won't be mocked. And he's looking for more men to say, all right, here I am, send me. Yeah.
And God used David's strengths.
Yes.
Like, David was like, I'm not going to put on this heavy armor. That's not, it's not me. Take it off. Like, he used David's strengths, and he used David for who he was, not who the world at the time was telling him who he needed to be in order to do it. And I think so many people get so scared to step forward, like, who am I?
Totally.
Who am I? Well, who was David?
Amen.
God was with him.
Man, he was like a bastard son. Like, David was of that family. He was the least valued. So insignificant that when his father brought him out before Samuel, that Samuel was like, wait, you're forgetting one. Like, that's David, the forgotten one. And dude, I mean, if we're going to use the forgotten one is the one through who Christ comes through, man, if he can use that one, then he certainly can use all of us.
Exactly. And that's the heart of this podcast, is to show everyone, like, he can use each and every one of us, and he does use each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Every single Christian who's involved in politics has gotten involved in a different way and is doing a different thing based on the strengths that God has given them and the gifts that God has given them. We don't all have to be the same.
Yeah.
We don't all have to run for office.
Yeah.
We don't all have to speak at Board of Supervisors meetings. We don't all have to put on massive events.
Yes.
But where does God call you? Like, where is he calling you? Where is he saying, this is where I want you to go?
Yeah.
When you say, here I am, send me, he'll tell you where to go.
Absolutely.
He told you where to go.
Good word. Absolutely.
So okay, Freedom Revival.
Yep.
What's next? Like, where are you at now? What things have you been up to these days, and how are you shaking things up politically?
Well, the Lord has definitely used me in ways that I never anticipated. I never thought that I would get engaged in politics. There was a friend of mine who's a strong believer, and she spoke words to me back in, it could have been before the lockdowns, but maybe it was during the lockdowns, and she said, you're going to get involved in politics. And I was like, really? Like, that's a crazy idea. I couldn't imagine doing anything in politics. But it's bizarre. And at that time, just so everybody knows how ignorant I was, somebody asked me if we were talking about politics, and they talked about the assembly, the state assembly. Mm-hmm. And I just dumbfounded. What is that? What is an assembly? And in the most kind way, that person tried to educate me on it, but I didn't get it. Not even clue. Walked away from that like, dude, no idea what you're referring to, but it sounds rad. Really strong people somewhere in the world. And I went from there to where I am here. Mm-hmm. And it was through curiosity. Yeah. It was just being curious. And now I could tell you like who my rep or my state assembly rep is, my senator, congressional. I can tell you these names, and I can tell you who ran against them in the election, because I was curious enough to get engaged and say yes along the way. It's like a bunch of yeses led me to a point where I have much more education. And now I can tell you like how the American system, like where the ideas about this republic came from, and that we don't live in a democracy. And I can tell you why it's not a democracy and why it's a republic, because I was so curious, and people saying we live in a democracy and finding out like, do we? And then being curious for that answer. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm in a position where I want to know enough to educate people to get to a point where we as citizens can self-govern, because that's what a republic is. So and as citizens, that's our duty, is to self-govern. The government isn't supposed to be your daddy. The government is supposed to protect your rights, your inalienable rights, not civil rights. Civil rights are created by government. Inalienable rights are created by God. Mm-hmm. And it's their duty to protect your inalienable rights. And if a government begins to be tyrannical, which our government is doing, it's the duty of citizens who are informed about the U.S. Constitution and the state constitutions, what their rights are, and to protect them yourselves. And so today, I'm reading a lot of books. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to activate the church. I partner with TPUSA Faith. Mm-hmm. They're an amazing organization. Charlie Kirk's incredible. And so I've been working with them to engage pastors. You know, what that organization has become is really a light in the darkness. Charlie Kirk's vision with recognizing a republic is designed for a moral and righteous people. And it used to be the pastors that would help people understand what morality and righteousness looks like. Exactly. But unfortunately, so many pastors have gone woke, and TPUSA Faith is helping pastors with curriculum, and they're giving resources and helping them get speakers that are educated on the topic if the pastor's not, which is monumental, because I think pastors today are overwhelmed with their responsibilities. You know, they're managing their staff, they're managing the people that are in the church themselves, like their members, and then they're doing funerals, and they're doing weddings, and they're going out to the events, and they've got to have coffee with people in the community, and they're so busy that they don't have time to get outside their, like, keep the main thing, the gospel lane. But in reality, if they don't, China and Germany and Russia, they had churches that were active, during the gulags. there were churches active. And during China, like the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and currently right now in China, there are churches. But that church is told, as long as you keep the main thing, just talk about your spiritual stuff. Stay pious, stay holy, stay spiritual. Don't talk about government. Then the church can stay active and keep doing what they're doing and keep the facade about being holy and pious and comparing your church to other churches.
Yeah.
But look at the millions of people that died because the church agreed to the government to not talk about government. And Charlie Kirk with TPUSA Faith and the amazing organization is trying to remind pastors that this republic was built on pastors. The American Revolution was called the Protestant Revolution, the Presbyterian Revolt. You know, it was churches and pastors. The Black Robe Regiment is another bad word used from the British, talking about how pastors are creating this regiment because they're speaking boldly against culture and against Britain, because Britain is breaking the contract. You know, the colonies were bound to the king. The king was their supreme sovereign. The king was their sovereign, and the British Parliament changed the contract that the colonies had with England, where they started doing the taxation and they started shipping people overseas, and they started making it a trial not by their peers, and all the making them have slaves where they couldn't release their slaves. Well, that was all through Parliament, and through the legislative branch, right? But that's not the agreement that the colonies had established. And so when they write the Declaration of Independence, it's to the king, because the king is supposed to protect them. And so there's a contract where they will be obedient as long as they protect them. But the king wasn't agreeing to their contract anymore, because he was allowing the legislative to steal from them, to imprison them, to put soldiers in their homes. And they're writing these grievances saying, how
steal,
dare
kill,
you?
and destroy, you say?
Yes. And so here we are today.
Yeah.
The same exact thing's happening. And it's the pastors, their duty is to stand up against evil. That's who we've always been as the church. Look at Sam Rutherford, who wrote Lex Rex in 1640, where he through his understanding of the gospel and the role of the church, he inspired John Locke, and John Locke inspired countless others, which created this republic. But the origin of it is the gospel and the self-governing principles within it.
Yeah.
And the only way we get back there is if we have courageous pastors willing to do the uncomfortable things. And TPUSA Faith is really attempting to remind pastors, hey, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's not that scary.
Yeah.
You know, you won't get death threats. And if you do, it's great. It's good publicity. Use it.
It means you're doing the right thing.
It means you're doing the right thing.
It means you're angering the enemy.
Yes.
Right?
100%. Yes.
And I think too, what a lot of people don't realize is separation of church and state was never meant for the church to separate from the state. Right. It was always meant for the state to keep out of the church.
Yes.
For the government to keep out of the church and to not tell the church what to do or say.
Yeah.
And
it's even more nuanced than that, because it was federal. It was the federal church. So when that letter was written from the churches of Danbury Baptist to Jefferson, it was all federal. Will this U.S. Constitution cause any problems to our churches? And Jefferson says, no, there's a dividing wall between the church and the state, where the churches will always be free to do as they've always done. And it's ridiculous, because with context, there were state churches at the time. Maryland, Catholic. Think about it. You know, it was a Catholic colony in a Catholic state. Pennsylvania is William Penn. It was Quakers. It was like the Quaker state, which was run by Quakers. Pennsylvania had an oath of office. When Jefferson wrote this letter back to the Danbury Baptist Church, Pennsylvania, if you wanted to be in the state legislature, you had to read, yes, I believe in Jesus Christ. Yes, I believe that there is one true God, of one true living God. Yes, I believe in the inerrancy of the Bible. To get into office of the judicial, the legislative, or the executive branches in the state of Pennsylvania. So Jefferson obviously wasn't talking about limiting the church or even limiting the state churches. It was limiting the federal government's ability to create a national church, because they truly believed in individual authority to govern themselves, which unfortunately we're so far from.
It's insane.
It is insane. It's unfortunate.
It's one of those things where you're like, where
Yeah.
where did things take that turn?
Yeah.
And you want to go back and like there isn't, you can't just point to one moment.
No, you can't.
It's been like a slow, gradual thing, but we have pivoted so much. And it's time now for the church to step up, for Christians to get active, to get involved, to have a voice in the governing body of our lives, like people who are telling us how we can and cannot live our everyday lives.
Yes.
We need to get involved and get active.
Come on.
And on that note, there are a lot of people probably listening right now who want to get active, don't even know where to start, or think that they don't have, what it takes, or they think that any kind of fear that they might have. What advice or life would you like to speak into those people right now who need to get active? Yeah,
I'd say it's okay. Be okay where you're at and realize, could you have done more in the past? Absolutely. All of us could have. I could have done way more, but for some reason I didn't. So recognize where you're at and realize you can do something today.
Yes.
You can do something different today. There's books that I've had on my bookshelf that have accumulated dust that I've forced myself to read because I want to be able to get through them, and I can't get through them if I don't pick them up today. And so now I brought my backpack with me, and I've got, I think, like 4 or 5 books in it.
What are they?
It's one is a response to David Chilton. He's a Christian socialist who is talking about how a church, or the duty of a Christian, is to give everything away, give it all away, your duty is to respond to allow the socialist government to take care of it. So David Chilton wrote this book back in like the 60s or 70s. So this
Bible was he reading?
Dude, Christians take this stuff out of context. Like, think about Acts, where the Acts church were giving everything away. So they'll use that and extrapolate on it, saying everybody should be forced to give everything, or everybody should give everything away. And so they do it through gunpoint now, where they're using this compulsion by firearms to be taxed and forced to give, like feed the hungry and the needy. But in reality, those Christians at that time desired to get everything away, which is why the Lord struck Ananias and Sapphira dead when they lied about it, because they didn't actually feel the heart change to give it away. They wanted to fit in with the cool kids, and while they're keeping their treasures at home. And so David Chilton, socialist, Christian, but many of these institutions are these days. Christian institutions have a lot of socialist leaders, and so this is a book in response to it that was written in the 70s. I've got a few. I can't think of the rest at the moment. Well-Versed. I have Well-Versed in my bag.
It's a great book.
Jim Garlow, he's a legend. So I would say find someone who's doing what you want to do and realize they got there with baby steps. Chad Wright, Jocko, these are like Navy SEALs. Chad Wright's an incredible example. He was 18. He had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. So he's like sitting there watching TV, binge watching, and he sees an ad for the Navy SEALs, and he's like, hey, most difficult training in the world? Yeah, sign me up. So he signs up out of just haste. And now he is this motivational trail runner. He never would have become that if he wasn't sitting there binge watching TV. So should we binge watch TV? Well, probably not. There's better things we can do, but the Lord can use it to inspire you to get off your butt and do something, because it takes a yes today for tomorrow to be different. And for myself is a great example. I was terrified a number of times. I was scared. Every time I'd go back to the mic to speak, I was like, dude, how do I speak again? Like, the last one went like bananas, and what if I say something stupid? And I did all the time. I've said dumb things because I'm learning, and I'm okay with failing, and I pray that the Lord will use my humiliation to humble me. And I'm so curious that even when I fail, I'll just keep, stumbling along and keep doing it. And I believe that's what's needed, is people to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to be curious and say yes and do something, get uncomfortable. There are people I respect in this community. Actually, Bill Wells is one. Bill Wells, the mayor of El Cajon, he's running for Congress right now. I'm so impressed where his journey started, because his wife essentially elbowed him in the side, and she's like, hey,
let's do something.
You should run for office. And he's like, you're insane, woman.
Yeah.
And he humbles himself to hear the voice of counsel, and he says yes, and yes, and yes. And now he's running for Congress against freaking Sarah Jacobs, who is one of the most corrupt congressional women that I've ever witnessed. And she's owned by, all the unions. But, it's his yes that got him to where he's at. And he never thought he'd be running against a behemoth like Sarah Jacobs, who's like Qualcomm money. But here he is. He's a David in the ring. Like, what ring can we get in where we can get our faces all marred up with dust and say, I don't care what the critics say.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter anyway. And there's a fear that we have of man. I care about what God says.
Yeah.
Because there will be a day when he will be standing and I will be bowing and crying and sobbing. And I pray that in that moment that he says, well done.
Yes.
Because that's all that matters. It's
Amen.
Everything will fade away. Your fortune will fade away. The Lord says, don't store up your treasures in heaven where moth and rust will destroy it. Sure, you can be wealthy. Great. You've got your comfortable life. But in the end, will he say, good job?
Yeah.
Will he say, well done,
yes.
my servant? Because you're not your own God. We are slaves to Christ.
Yep.
And do we act like it? Do we act like we're owned? Or if we are owned, do we act like we're owned by someone else? Because it sure is dangerous if you're a slave to something besides the gospel, if you're proclaiming to be the gospel. And I pray that more people will recognize, like, they can hear the voice of the Lord. If you say yes to Christ, you hear the voice of the Lord and do those uncomfortable things, because that's where the fruit is. There's fruit in the discomfort.
And if he's calling you, he'll be there with you.
Heck yeah. Dude.
Amen.
Consider it pure joy in every trial and tribulation. So if it's hard, it's an opportunity.
Amen. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Dude, what a joy.
It's been so great. My prayer is that everyone listening to this will be inspired by you. I know I am.
Come on.
I want to have you on again and again and again, because I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for taking the time today. Yeah. And I just can't wait to see what the Lord will do through you next.
Amen. Thank you so much. I'm truly grateful. And I pray that as you journey, that you will continue to do things like this. You're stepping into the unknown and you're creating life. And I pray that we'll all follow your example.
Thank you.
Keep crushing.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to share it and make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss an episode. Now go out in the world and make disciples. We'll catch you in the next one.